Welcome back to 10 Minute Takes. My name is Hannah Gallacher and I'm here today with Helen McManus, who is the NMAHP Education and Development Lead for Advanced and Enhanced Practice. Bit of a mouthful, Helen.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thanks for joining us today. Brilliant. So let's start with my question that I ask everyone at the start, which is, what is a really valuable lesson that you've learned as an educator that you wish that you'd known earlier on in your career?
I suppose one of the most important things I've learned is taking into consideration the learner's needs.
Okay.
I think in previous roles where I've worked as a lead and I've developed nurses to different levels of practice, I've maybe structured it around the academic programme rather than really exploring their individual needs. And I think that, for me now, is one of the most paramount things, is really considering that individual and putting them to the centre of their learning.
Brilliant, that's interesting. That's really interestingly very similar to what Sharon Harrison said her. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
so that must be a key theme, the way that we're structuring that.
I think perhaps it's come from our education on our PG CAP, and it was really something that we explored quite heavily, because it is forefront, because the success of your programme is the success of your learner, and if your learner isn't really put centre focused, then you put that success at risk, in my opinion. So I think perhaps that's why we're coming out with similar sorts of vision for our learners and for ourselves as educators.
Brilliant, great. So what keeps you motivated as an educator to keep learning and keep striving for that next step?
Yeah, I mean, my motivation right the way across my career, so I mean, I started my career many years ago in a bank, and it was always to try and do the best job I could possibly do, and that extends across my nursing career and also into education now. And foremost for me is, what are we providing ultimately for the patients? And what influence can I make on that learner, so that we know that when they go into practice, they've been fully supported, they're educated to that level of practice, and they can deliver what services expect, but also they can care for the patients in the way that we expect them to.
Yeah, and I think Emma Dawes summed that up really nicely when we first moved into this building, and she looked out at the car park. Over the car park you can see NSEC, and she said, isn't that amazing that it's framed what we're here for is the patient across the road? Yeah,
and I totally agree with that, because that is the focus.
Yeah.
That is our focus. You know, in whatever way we get embroiled in our education programmes, we never need to lose sight of that main theme of delivery, and that's what motivates you. And personally, in my learning, that's what motivates me, is to make myself the best that I can be. But also I want my students to be the best that they can be.
Absolutely. So you're responsible for two of the programmes here.
Yeah.
Healthcare, prescribing for healthcare professionals.
Yes.
And the enhanced clinical practice.
Yeah, so it's independent prescribing for healthcare professionals, or enhanced prescribing for healthcare professionals. I think is a new phrase that they're using, and that's one of University of Sunderland's programmes, which we will be delivering here at the Health and Care Academy. And the second one is the enhanced clinical practitioner apprenticeship programme, which is a new programme, new to Sunderland. Their first delivery this year. Our first delivery will be from January 2025.
Amazing. So a real trailblazer.
Yeah, it is. It's really exciting, because it is a new programme, it's a new standard nationally, it's an opportunity for staff who are going to be working at that enhanced level to get that academic background at a national standard, rather than historically nurse practitioners and nurse specialists have really learnt their craft in the workplace, which is nothing wrong with that, but they haven't had the academic background, so the programmes of development, which not having that academic history can sometimes restrict their further development in the future. So it's given our staff that national standard. it's also telling us what we know what we've taught them, so we know what to expect from them in practice.
Brilliant.
So it gives some assurance to the trust, and it's about valuing your staff and you know, thinking about that vision of where do you want to go next, and perhaps you might want to go on to another program, or you might want to stay at this level. But we're going to support you in whichever direction you take. So it is a really exciting programme that I'm looking forward to be part of the delivery of,
Brilliant. So I know there's a real focus on both of your programmes in the supervision of the people that are doing those programmes, because that's, you know, a real essential part of prescribing and enhanced practice. How important is that in the development of professionals' supervision?
Well, in my opinion, crucial. We can teach the skill in the classroom, we can teach the academic theory, but that further knowledge and application of that theory and what we teach them, the knowledge that we give them in the classroom, needs to be applied into practice and into everyday patient presentations, how they manage the patient, how they approach the patient, take the history, that application, and then that application in clinical reasoning, and really sort of investigating further with the patient what their problem might be and how we can help them. It's something that it's a bit of an art, and it's something that needs to be really developed in the workplace, in my opinion. And it needs to be a supervisor who has knowledge, experience in the specific field, so they're able to really bring that person on in their development. And this is all supported by educational theory. There is a theory around this about an individual sits in their zone of experience and knowledge, and to pull them out of that zone and into the zone of learning, it needs a supervisor, mentor, educator, whichever title you want to give them under that umbrella of supervision, who has the knowledge, the skill and the ability to do it. So for me, it's crucial. It's crucial that they have a good relationship with the student, that they understand the programme that they're doing, and that they have that experience and knowledge to be able to develop that student to that next level.
Brilliant. And how would someone go about almost offering themselves as a supervisor? How would that be something you could access? If there's people who watch this and think, I would love to be able to help someone with their development, I've got a lot of experience and skills in this particular...
In that area.
Thank you,
I think that's a really interesting question, because, you know, I think we are faced with a bit of a squeeze on those who can supervise for certain programmes, and that is something that, you know, we're looking at and thinking, who do we need to be able to provide the supervision? What support do they need? What knowledge do we need to partake with them so that they can actually fulfil the role? But equally so, it's about that person having the ability within their own job role to be able to give the time that's required to supervise somebody, and that needs to be job planned. So I think it's a discussion initially with your service. So if you're thinking about, you know, looking at your workforce plan, and we're introducing, you know, these levels of practice into our workforce plan because we've got certain pockets where they could really influence the impact on patient care, and then it's looking at the rest of the workforce and saying, who could be that supervisor? How do we job plan it? How do we give them the time? And so it really is a service development plan that's required to be able to deliver on this workforce plan, but also to deliver on the model of an apprenticeship, which is a work-based model. You know, the theory that the student is learning in practice all the time, and how we deliver that supervision as well. You know, starting off with maybe direct supervision and then extending that as the individual grows their skill, so that you can have a more like indirect level of supervision, and that reduces the burden on the supervisor. So it's looking at different ways of delivering supervision as well. But how does that individual put themselves up for it? I think they talk to their service and they say, I'm willing to be part of this, and I would like to be part of this. And then they talk about all the practicalities of how that might work for the service itself.
Because that's really development within itself, isn't it? being able to
Absolutely, yeah.
develop someone else is a development for yourself.
Yeah, it is, and we should be encouraging that, because that in itself increases learning. Because if you're supervising somebody in a program, you're also doing some learning, or you're doing some revision of learning that you did previously. So, yeah, we absolutely should be encouraging that.
Brilliant. So what would your advice be to a nurse or an allied health professional or a midwife who is thinking about this kind of further study and is maybe not sure? You know, what are those barriers that people face in order to embark on that next level of practice, do you think?
I mean, there are many barriers to healthcare professionals who are wanting to access academic programmes, and this has been researched quite heavily, and some of the main barriers are what work position they're in, whether they're in full-time or part-time work. You know, apprenticeships are generally delivered to those who are working 30 hours plus. That's something I think we need to look at. There are ways around that, and perhaps it's something for a future vision, but we do need to make education accessible to the part-time workforce as well as the full-time workforce. So that's a barrier. The other barrier is just basically life. Life gets in the way sometimes, and it's understanding how a programme can be not adapted, but how we can put adaptations in to support you during that programme. And then it's also the opportunities. Sometimes we get so busy in the delivery of service that we can forget about those development opportunities, and then time rolls on and we've kind of stood still with education and development. So it's always be a service being, you know, having it as a key focus of their workforce plan, and giving the opportunities to their employees. But initially, if an individual is looking at either of the programmes or wanting to understand a pathway, then come and talk to us. We're here, we're
enthusiastic.
We want to be involved. We want to know about you. We want to know what the problems are that you're facing, because it might be a problem to you, but it might be, so we might have the solution. So I think don't sit back and say, I can't do it. Come and ask the questions.
How can I?
And then we can help you to find the way to do it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to sum up, to end, what is your favourite thing to teach?
Wow, that's interesting as well. But historically minor injuries. And that's purely based on the fact that that's my comfort zone. So I'm comfortable. I feel as though I know it. I like to see the development, because I get a buzz about teaching somebody how to perhaps examine an ankle, and then watching them do it, and you think, and then seeing them then take that into practice, and that whole sense of achievement that they get from seeing their own patient, and coming to the conclusions of what they think might be wrong with that patient's ankle, for that example. And I think that's the buzz, and that's probably my favourite at the moment. But then I'm embarking on 2 new programmes, so ask me in a year's time what my favourite is, and it may well have changed.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.